Again, everybody, welcome back and thank you for joining us today. My name is Olin. I will be your moderator for this webinar, and welcome to the Suppliers Management and Suppliers Assessment webinar. Before we dive into our discussion, I would like first to show you our agenda for today. We will start with a very short introduction just to give you some important details about our speakers, but also some house rules. And of course, we will talk about the GMP Plus Academy. We will share with you some information about the Academy, especially for those who haven't heard about us yet. Of course, we will go directly to the suppliers assessment and suppliers management session. But we would like to make it a little bit different from the usual presentation that we do, because we were going to have an up-close interview with Anna Mate from the Treco. And later on this part, we're also going to have our question and answer portion. So if you have some questions or you wanted to clarify something, we encourage you to please stay put and please feel free to share with us your questions or clarifications. It's a very short introduction. We know that you've been into many webinars since the pandemic came, but we still want to remind everybody, we would kindly request you to kindly mute your microphone so that we avoid unnecessary noises. Also, we would like to request everybody to please turn off your camera for better connection. And please stay curious during the discussion. Therefore, we would like to encourage you all to please use the chat box for your questions. And later on, we will dive into those questions during our question and answer. For today's goals of our webinar, we would like to share with you that you can see now in your screen our goal. We would like to increase the understanding about the suppliers assessment and suppliers management. And of course, we would like to do that by sharing our best practices in our daily work. And we hope that at the end of this webinar, we are able to have maybe an understanding of one or two, or we understand everything about how we can assess our suppliers and how we can manage that, of course, through the help of our guest speaker for today. I would like to share with you our speakers, to present to you our speakers. We have Anna Mate Ornahe. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Anna. She is the Global Quality Manager from the Treco, and she has more than 30 years of experience from the aquaculture to the livestock sector in terms of suppliers management and global quality management as well. And of course, we also have our very own Roswitha. She's our community manager from the GMP Plus Academy. Without further ado, I would like to set the stage and hand over the discussion with Roswitha. Roswitha, we're going to have an introduction about the GMP Plus Academy and how we can help the professional, of course, to gain your knowledge through our platform. Roswitha, I will give you the floor now.
Thank you, Olin. My name is Roswitha. I'm working for GP Plus for 2.5 years now as a community manager. And I'm responsible for the learning and management system we offer, our tooling. So I work together with our partner who has developed the platform. And besides that, I upload all the content. So we have 14 partners all over the world who offer their training material on our training marketplace. So I'm uploading it over there. So the content is also my responsibility. And of course, the communication about our platform. So this is the newsletter, post on LinkedIn, and of course, press releases. And the recent one was about supplier assessment and management, of course, the topic we're going to talk about today. So that was a short introduction. But I would also like to share our purpose. It's our mission. The mission of the GMP Plus Academy is to enable professionals in the feed chain to contribute to feed safety and sustainability worldwide by facilitating, sharing, and securing knowledge. And everyone is welcome to join. But what can you expect from the Academy? What does it have to offer? It's a one-stop shop for feed safety training from trainers all over the world. It offers a wide selection of short online modules. These are about different important topics, which I will discuss later, but mostly in feed safety and sustainability. And after completion, you will receive a certificate when you are trained by our partners or when you follow an online module on our platform. If you have questions during your experience with our platform, our support from GMP Plus International will help you. You can reach them via email, and in the last slide of this presentation, you will find the details. It's easy to register, open for anyone who wants to join, and it's for free to create an account. So these are the topics we offer in terms of online modules. First of all, prerequisites. It consists of 10 modules. Feed safety culture, 7 modules. Safe transport of GMP Plus feed, also 7 modules. We have an e-learning on the basics of HACCP, an e-learning on establishing a monitoring plan, and we have an e-learning on the principles of the GMP Plus feed certification scheme, which is for free. So if you want to try it out, you can find it on our marketplace when you filter on GMP Plus International. And last but not least, and most important for today, we have the supplier assessment and management, consisting of 2 e-learning modules, which will be also discussed today. But now we go to the main topic of this e-learning, the interview with Anne. Olin, I will give you the floor now.
Thank you very much, Roswitha, for giving us some overview about what GMP Plus Academy can do for everybody in the industry, of course. Now, I think suppliers assessment and management, or our suppliers, are the most important part in ensuring safe and reliable feed production. And it is very important if we know how to manage them and how to deal with them properly. For GMP Plus, of course, that's one of the most important factor also when we talked about feed safety. Now, let's move on to the main topic of this webinar, the suppliers assessment and management. And as I've mentioned earlier, we are going to do this in a differently today. Rather than the traditional presentation, we will have an interactive interview with Anne. And Anne, of course, will going to share her more than 30 years of expertise in the feed supply chain. So without further ado, I would like to call on Anne. Anne, hi, could you please share with us your camera?
Yes, hi, Pauline.
How are you doing today, Anne?
I'm very, very fine, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you also for accepting our invitation. It was a pleasure to have you here with us, and I think we're all excited to hear your talk, but also your explanations and your expertise that you will be sharing with us today.
Yeah, I hope it will be helpful.
Yeah, I hope so too. Looking forward to that. But Anya, as we've said, we were going to do this in a different way of presenting, because I prepared actually some questions for you, and I know that you also prepare some slides how you can illustrate better how you will explain it. So let's get started, Anne. I would like to maybe just to set the mood within this session. We're talking about suppliers assessment and suppliers management, but could you please help us understand what's the difference between the two and how each plays a critical role in ensuring our robust supply chain?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. So first, supplier assessment. This is the process of evaluating and analyzing a supplier's capabilities and risks to ensure that they meet your organization standards and requirements consistently. So this is as in the same way as the modules is focusing on what I'm presenting now, focusing on the food safety part. So for the supply assessment, it's important to assess the quality standard and the organization of your supplier, and also to assess how they are compliant with their national rules and legislation, and also the quality certificates that they hold. Then it's important to do a risk profile and check how the real risks are controlled. So we are talking about risks in connection with the raw materials, with the processes, the environment, and then I'm thinking both the environment physically, but also the environment more financially and business-wise. And also to look into the storage and transport risks and how these are controlled by your supplier. It's also an important part of the supply assessment to assess the flexibility and responsiveness of the supplier. To be able to do a good assessment, you need to have clear criteria what your organization, your company needs. And I also want to mention a couple of pitfalls. So if you don't have a clear criteria and a clear assessment process, or you execute it poorly, then you can also get into problems. Another thing is if you have inadequate data collection, or if you are ignoring the cultural differences. So these are the pitfalls. And if you do have a good evaluation, it helps to build a strong relationship and to optimize your strengths and maintain consistent quality in the supply chain. So that was about the supplier assessment. And I want to go to the next slide. Doesn't react here now. Okay, so for supplier management, as you see here, the supplier identification and selection is part of the management. And the management, that is the process of overseeing and optimizing the relationship with your suppliers to ensure that they meet your organization standards for quality, cost, delivery, and service over time. So in addition to the supplier identification and selection, it's also about following up on the compliance and do auditing of the suppliers, to monitor their performance, to have a good collaboration and communication with your suppliers, and continuous risk management. I also included contract management, because contract can also include specific requirements related to food safety. And of course, always when we work about quality, it's continuous improvement is very important. For this part, a clear strategy is very important. So you need to have a strategy for your supplier management. And here I also mentioned a couple of pitfalls. Again, if the process is not well described or poorly executed, if you have an over-reliance on single suppliers, so maybe you only have one supplier from one of your raw materials, that can be a big risk. And also, if you ignore supplier development, so it may be that you have strict requirements, you have a supplier, but you should maybe think about developing the supplier instead of just saying no. So if you have a good supplier management, you will have reduce the risk and improve the supply chain efficiency and foster long-term mutual beneficial relationships and partnerships. That was my high over introduction to the two topics.
Thank you very much, Anne. Anne, we can come back to the suppliers assessment. You've mentioned about the criteria, and the criteria is set by the company based on their own preferences and based on their own factors that they want to consider in providing their supplier in assessing their suppliers. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any tips how we can develop this criteria? Because I can imagine that there are some companies asking, yeah, but how can I develop the criteria? So do you have any tips or tricks that we can share to our audience?
Well, I think it's really important to work risk-based. So for this, what are the real risks for your company, and what are your customers' requirements, for example? They can differ a lot within different industries. So how we set up the criteria to assess and approve our suppliers I think it's really important to think risk-based, and also to spend quite a lot of time in the initial assessment, because then when you know what the risks are and what needs to be mitigated, then it's less work going forward. And if you can reduce the non-conformities and the issues that you have, then of course it's a lot of money and time that you don't have to spend later.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I assume, Anna, whether they have the certification or they don't have the certification, having your suppliers assessment and management in place is very important.
Yeah, it is definitely. And of course, over time, things have changed a lot. And today, most of us don't work with any non-certified suppliers. But then sometimes we need to spend some time and resources helping a potential supplier to get the certification. And that's also a very good way of building a relationship and a collaboration with our suppliers to help them to get to the standard where we want them to be.
Yeah, that's very good. It's actually very encouraging to also encourage them to ensure that they practice the same way how you practice and how you think about feed safety.
Yeah.
Okay, Anya, thank you very much for enlightening us how to differentiate the suppliers assessment and suppliers management. And but you've spoken like super expert. Like for me, I saw your profile. You've been in the industry for more than 32 years now. But how did you come up with this role? How do you end up with with really being keen into the suppliers, etc.?
Yeah, so I majored in microbiology, so that's my background, and I started within research, and then I moved to product development and marketing, and worked with the Nutreco company Skretting Norway for many years in fish health products. But then I got the opportunity to become part of developing their supplier management system, and so I decided to switch from marketing to quality, and worked for many years in the Norwegian company. But I was also involved a bit in Nutreco's development of the Nutrace standard, which is the Nutreco quality standard, where we also have a major pillar related to item and supplier management. And then after some years, I was also, our department got the opportunity, or was organized in a different way. So we were also responsible for the whole Skretting aquaculture division of Nutreco. And from last year, I was moved into the global Nutreco quality department. So this is quite new for me to be on the Nutreco level. So that was from October last year. So I have been working for many years and things have changed. My responsibility has changed from Norway to global Skatting to global Nutreco, but also the world around us has changed a lot. So today the requirements, like I mentioned, non-certificate companies are not very relevant anymore. When I started, some people laughed at companies that spent money and time to get certified. So things have changed a lot. Today, the requirements for documentation and certifications, the sustainability, the traceability, everything it's much more requirements today than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I can imagine nowadays we really have to provide something tangible as a proof that, yeah, we are documenting and we are verifying everything that we do. But I am so what do you call this, in awe to hear your experience. It was a very good I think transition, but also I would like to emphasize what you've mentioned, that it is changing, and there is indeed a lot of changes in our industry, and we really have to cope up with that with those change. And speaking of change, because since you've started a long time ago until after the present, what are the most important learning that you could share with everybody now listening to you?
Yeah, I would like to mention three things. The first one is risk-based thinking. I think I mentioned it a couple of times already. For me, it's really important to really know what are the real risks, and then to see how can we mitigate these risks. How can we, if you have a hazard, what control measures can you put in place to reduce the probability of these hazards happening or becoming a risk? And then when you have an event, you should be prepared and have in place already plans to reduce the severity. So you can also have control measures in place to reduce the severity in case of an incident. So for me, it's really important to also think in the way that you spend more time initially and then to really know what you're doing, and then you will save a lot of time and money going forward. And also for me, it's an important rule that you should spend time today, you should spend time on things that would reduce your amount of work in the future. So that is, I think, it's easy. We are all very busy, and it's easy to start just doing things the way we always did it. And that takes me to my second point, which is continuous improvement. So it's really important to always start as soon as you have new information. Okay, how do we use this information into our quality systems? So you can, whatever learning you have from your own or others' experience, immediately in a way register this new information into your system. And today, when we have everything more or less is digital, at least in our part of the world, it's easy to do. It's much more easy to do this and to immediately change what you're doing based on what's changing in the environment around you. So I can give one example that if you have you're buying raw material and you require from your supplier a certificate of analysis for certain high-risk substances, and in addition you do your own monitoring program and you have a lot of analysis that you do every year, but then you hear about some, for example, from RAS system in Europe, that they have found a new pesticide that you haven't heard about before, but now they find this in this raw material in a certain region, maybe several countries in a certain region. Then you can contact your suppliers and say, are you aware of this? Have you done any analysis? You can gather information, and then based on that you can say, okay, maybe this is already under control. All the suppliers are aware, they do their analysis. Or you can say, okay, this is really high risk. We should have a certificate of analysis for each of the batches that they supply us, or you can decide to put it into your monitoring program. So this is the way of doing it. It can also be related to changes in the regulation that we had a couple of years ago, some pesticides that were forbidden in Europe, and then the maximum residue limit went far down. And then again, you need to take action and check, is this a high risk or a medium risk or a low risk? What do we need to do? So this is my second. So always make sure that you take action and immediately act when there are changes. And my last part is about it's about showing respect and being a bit humble when you meet suppliers. And I think it's really important, and I already mentioned it, to take into account the different cultures and the different way of doing things. It's easy to think that we do best, but sometimes we can learn a lot. So when we meet suppliers, that we are curious and ask if they do something that we don't really understand, to ask why, because they may have a good reason. It may, and my experience is it often makes sense how they do it because of the environment where they are working. So for me, this is really important to show respect and be open for different cultures. And in these pictures, you see these pictures are taken the same week, and they are showing the process of processing the same raw material. Very, very different technology. And for me, this is to illustrate that when we see that there are different technologies, it's easy to be biased and think that the one with a high technology is the best company, but it's not necessarily like that. So these pictures are to illustrate the importance of taking differences in culture into account and show respect.
Annie, I just wanted to ask, is that picture you said taken the same week? Is it also taken in the same country?
Yes, it's the same country.
And they have the
country,
same product.
Yeah, same product, same country, same week. So it shows that it can be really big differences in technology, but it doesn't necessarily show that there's a big difference in quality.
Right. And I would like to point out what you've mentioned. You said about respect. And I think that is very important that you don't look at the company or your suppliers based on what they physically shown you, like what you've said earlier. Like it doesn't mean that they have they're using different technologies. How they do the quality is different. Could be maybe one is even better than the other one. I do not know, but I think that's your experience. And I would like to point out on that you don't judge your suppliers according to what they can physically present to you, but also at the same time, there are other things that you must consider, including, of course, documentation, their way of working, their relationship with you, etc., and how they follow your process and your criteria. Anya, I would like to come back to the first slide. You've mentioned about that because of the technology nowadays, because a lot of things are becoming digitalized also, there are amount of work that we can reduce. And is this some sort of saying that the technology nowadays can help us to speed up or to be more efficient in working? How can you differentiate that from your experience before and what you experience nowadays?
Yeah, definitely that the data that we have, of course, provided that it's reliable data, but when you have data, for example, you have your non-conformities registered in the system, and you can take reports and you can see, for example, if there are certain suppliers that tend to be non-conforming. You can also see if there are certain raw materials that tend to have specific non-conformities, or if there's a trend in the analytical data that you have that may alert you. So it's much easier to make reports when you have data electronically. So of course you can be very efficient and make a lot of good data also out of having things on paper. I have seen that, really good traceability systems with a lot of books, but it requires much more resources.
Yeah, can imagine. Thank you for sharing that, Anna. I have another question for you. What kind of criteria do you use when you are selecting or qualifying new suppliers? Do you have any? I'm sure Matrico has, but also I'm sure it's also based on your experience. You're adding your expertise on that. So if you could share us some of those.
Yeah, I can do so. And I think one important thing, what kind of criteria, it's really related to the role of your supplier. And for me, it's really important when you start with a new supplier relationship to understand what is the supplier's role in the supply chain and what other partners are involved, from the farmer or the catch, if it's, for example, for fish meal that is wild caught, through the processing, transport, storage, and also till your factory to the receiver control, to understand what is the role. So if the supplier, for example, is only handling money and not touching the product, then there are other parts that we need to assess and make sure that they have the control that we want. And if they don't, what kind of control measures do we need to put in place to make sure that when it receives in our factory, it is safe? So my experience is a lot with bulk transport, also with vessels, where when the vessels come to our port, we cannot afford to, or it's really difficult to return it. If you get small trucks, maybe you can return some and receive others. But again, the more control you have earlier in the chain, the less work it is, according to my experience. So really to make sure that your supplier and the manufacturer do have the control measures. And so that is the important. Then, of course, we talked about certification, and if they are not certified, it is a good opportunity to build relations with the supplier if we engage in helping them to get a certificate. So it's not a short answer, what are the criteria? There are, of course, they need to be able to document the process and document their controls, and that is what we normally look into. We use by using some questionnaires or checklists and receive documents from them, like product data sheet, safety data sheet, the certifications that they have, and then yeah, we normally sorry we normally perform what we call a desktop audit to check all these documents to see if we can qualify them or if they need help to be qualified.
So one question, because you've mentioned about questionnaire. Is your questionnaire, what do you call this? Do you develop a questionnaire based on what kind of service provider or product provider you have? Or, for example, if you have supplier coming from Asia or supplier coming from Latin America or South America, how do you deal with your questionnaire? Is this something that one fixed questionnaire, or we say, oh no, we have questionnaire for service providers, we have questionnaires for raw materials, like the product itself, etc. How do you do that?
Yeah, the way we do it is to relate it to the role. So like you say, is it the service provider? Is it the supplier that is not touching the product? Is it the manufacturer? So it's different based on the role, but there's not one perfect answer to this, because it can also be that you would like to have, we have like, if it's from this country, if you have EU regulation, then you have to answer this kind and things like that. So it can also be to have specific questionnaires depending on the origin of the product, or even the type of raw material. So for example, is it bulk delivery or is it packed goods, things like that. So there is not one answer to that. I think it's really based on also how big is your supply portfolio. Is it lots of really different products, or is it very much similar products that you buy? So that is again, risk-based.
Risk-based, yeah. Oh, think about that, risk-based. So I would like to just to wrap up what you've mentioned. Control measure is very important. Of course, if your suppliers already have their certification, it's also good to verify the certification. But if they don't have the certification yet, well, we can always help as partners, as the cooperators, to help them to secure delivering safe products. Documentation is very important, and always think that it must be risk-based. So yeah, okay. Do you conduct audit visit? Because usually when you have suppliers, usually you go to sometimes you go to your suppliers, or sometimes you even mentioned earlier that you also do a computer or paper audit, something like that. So do you conduct site visit or audit as part of your suppliers qualification process? And if so, do you have any key areas that you think the people can learn from you where they can have focus with?
Yeah, so supplier audit is it's always part of the qualification to evaluate if we need to do a physical audit. Yeah. And in addition, we have audit plans. So we have a very big, very high number of suppliers. So again, we really need to make sure that we have a good evaluation of which ones needs to be audited and how often. And because also audits are really resource demanding, both from our side but also from the supply side, and we really, our goal is to use the audits also to develop a good relationship. So we don't want to come there and be looked at as any type of police. We come there to learn from them, and hopefully we can also learn something from them. And of course, in the preparations, we do some in-depth analysis again to see, okay, what is it that we want to verify during the audit? What are the most important parts for this specific manufacturer or supplier to verify during the audit?
Yeah. And this one is an example of your audit. Yeah.
It shows, I think, three things. The first one is the picture of me there wearing a helmet and goggles, and I have the mask in my hand here because I'm talking. But the HSE during audits, really important. Don't forget to make sure that HSE is taken care of when you visit an unknown facility. It's really important. Then it's also shown here the process control in the factory. So I think every audit we verify that the process that they do is according to their HACCP and what they have shared with us. So that is a really important one. Also, of course, if there are any CCPs, critical control points that we verify. And also here is a picture of the reference samples. It's also quite often that we check that they do have the reference samples that they're supposed to have. So, but really dependent on the preparations that we do, what is the most important things to verify during the audit.
Yeah, it's really important to keep in mind, as you said, what kind of product, what kind of services they provide you, and then from there you know where the possible risk may occur, and that's where you focus on your auditing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Anne. It was very insightful, actually. I'm looking in my right side because Rosita is actually sitting beside me, and I would like to invite Rosita now. Maybe we can stop sharing our screen so that we can Yes, thank you very much, Annie. Again, this is a very good discussion. I still have a lot of questions. Actually, I'm not sure if our audience, they also have their questions with for you and for Rosita. Let me just double check. I have here, maybe I can start with this for the first question. Contract management in OpCo level is under procurement. Does this mean quality assurance, QA, needs to be actively involved in this process instead of by just sending data and leaving everything to procurement?
Yeah, I think when it comes to food safety risks that we see, that if, for example, we need to have a certificate of analysis for each of the batches that they supply us, this must be part of the contract in one way or another. So of course there are a lot of different ways to work with suppliers, but to have some kind of agreement, and that's why I mentioned contract management. But in the agreement with the supplier, we need to specify what is important for us when it comes to food safety and quality for this raw material.
Yeah, we hope that the Anya was able to answer your question. Another question here, Anya, is the manufacturer not more important than the manufacturer? Should he also always be certified? And what is up to date? Can document be older than 10 years in your system?
I think it is definitely in very many cases the manufacturer or the processing of the raw material, but also the primary production. That is in many cases where the food safety risks come from. So yes, definitely the manufacturer is as important as the supplier. If it's different companies, the supplier is just, say, handling the paperwork, or may even transport and store the product, but definitely. And how long you store the documents, ideally they should not be 10 years, but for example, audit reports we store for 10 years, because it's always nice to go back and check, okay, what was the result last time and the time before when we audited.
Yeah. And because, as you've said, we're working risk-based, it's also good to have this document ready. Where does the risk occur? In which moment of this 10 years, right? Another question here, Anne, is physical audit necessary, especially for new suppliers?
So again, it's really depending. I don't think that you always need to do a physical audit. It depends on the risk and the origin. Where in the world is it? What kind of the control of the quality system they are certified, but also how much control do the national authorities have? So if we know that, for example, in Europe, that there is quite a lot of control from national authorities, it feels safer than when you are buying from a country where the national authorities are not doing anything or very little related to food safety.
Yeah. And I guess it's always a responsibility also of the company. Again, we're talking about risk-based. If there are little legislation about that, then the company must have their own prerogative how they can control and monitor.
Yeah.
Anya, another question here. A lot of questions for you, actually. Whether we do have suppliers audit for packaging material suppliers and manufacturers. I'm not sure if I am giving the complete thought about the question. Whether we have to do, or do we have to do something for the suppliers audit for packaging materials?
Yeah, so I've been in a couple of audits with packaging suppliers, and then it's basically about using virgin materials that they have control, that they are not using any materials in the packaging that can cover, so not cover, but carry any food safety, like pesticides or things that are not wanted in the feed. The other thing is related to HSE, that the bags are especially the big bags, that they can carry the weight that they are supposed to carry, so they are not falling down from the truck and things like that. So yes, there are several things to audit but again, for packaging, it's based on the risks that you see for this particular type of packaging and the country and the company that is producing it.
Yeah. Another question for you, Anna. How can we fix the audit frequency for suppliers? Any guidelines or any standard available?
No, I think it's really difficult to give a standard. Again, it's the risk.
Yeah.
What you see, and it's sometimes it's every year, sometimes it's every 2 years, every 5 years. It can even be that this is so well organized and so have documented everything so nice that and no issues over time. So that's also something. If you have rated it very, very low risk, but then suddenly you have issues, then you have to go back and say, okay, what happened here now? And really important to make sure that if you have a non-conformity, that the supplier can document that they have closed it, that they have taken both the preventive and corrective actions and are able to show that they've done that. So that's part of this. And if then it seems that they are not reliable, then maybe an audit is what you need to do. But
yeah,
first talk to them and get more information.
Indeed. It's very important to build the connection with them, as you've said earlier. Also, another question here. I'm just reading it. Who in your company starts a supplier or approves the supplier? Is it the purchasing department or you as the quality department?
It's quality that approves. So
Yeah.
it's very often started from procurement, but it can also start from product development, that there is a new raw material that they want to have in their product. So it can start from different, but product development would normally contact procurement to buy it. And then they ask quality to do the qualification. And the approval is in our case on OPCO level. So it's the operational company that approves for their facility. We don't approve globally for the whole company.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can start anywhere, but of course the request, the job order request always comes from the quality department and the product developers.
Yeah, the qualification work is done by quality, and also the approval is done by quality.
Yeah, because they set the, what do you call this, the requirements, no? We need this kind of product, this is the specifications, etc. And then that goes to the purchasing department or the buyer.
Yeah, we communicate with the procurement what is but also sometimes directly with the suppliers, what is the quality criteria that they need to be according to.
Yeah. We're talking about the quality and the criteria. Do you have also a criteria for your internal auditor? Because I can imagine we have question here. Any qualification requirement for auditor conducting the supplier's audit?
Yeah, so we have different layers in our company with local and regional and global and so on. So, but of course, a supplier, an auditor of supplier needs to be trained.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of training material and courses you can attend around the world, and we also do some internal training.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good to know. Knowledge is always part of that. And speaking of training, I would like to segue on that. I would like to call in to get Roswitha back together with me. We're actually sharing the one room because you developed a training e-learning module, and we call it the Suppliers Assessment and Suppliers Management e-learning module. Roswitha, as a community manager of the Academy, could you tell us more about the module that you developed?
Yeah, it's actually a course group consisting 2 modules. And the first one is about supplier assessment. To summarize, it goes over the 7 steps you should think of when assessing a supplier. And it also covers 7 important elements you should think of when selecting a supplier. For example, indeed certification, the origin of the product, if they are insured or not, and there are a few more elements to think of. So that's covered in supplier assessment module. And the second one is about supplier management, and it's more about monitoring your existing suppliers. Which is very important. If they change certain ways of working, this could lead to an additional risk. So yeah, you should always keep in touch, and the relationship is very important, so that they will inform you when something changes in their process.
Yeah.
So that's what they are about.
I think that's what also Anna is highlighting earlier. You were underlining relationship, cooperation, communication. So I think it's really, really very important to build up with your suppliers. And you developed this training. What inspired you to develop this kind of training?
It was actually developed together with our collective knowledge program group. These are a couple of companies bundling their knowledge together. So involved were Trouw Nutrition, Nutreco. Anna, of course, was representing Nutreco, De Heus, ABAG, and Nutrion International. And we decided together what topic it would be about. So it was actually a group decision to work on this topic.
Yeah. And you've mentioned Anne. Anne, you were part of the development of the e-learning module for supplier assessment and suppliers management. How is it working together with other experts? How was your experience?
I think it was very interesting and very rewarding that we were sharing the expertise and experiences, the methods that we used by the different experts in the group. So I think it gave new insight and was very inspiring.
Yeah. You've said inspiring, but also it taught you a lot of things as well. But considering, like Roswitha, you mentioned this is from different experts from different companies, from different organizations, of course. Was it difficult? How did you incorporate the real world application into training? Because I can imagine these are like different discipline, different way of working, different probably way of thinking. I do not know. But how do you incorporate it into a real world application?
I think one of the really nice things was that we did share a lot of experiences and use these to give concrete examples in the training modules. And I think that's very valuable also. I hope for the trainers, the trainees, or what we call the participants, when they see it, that they can, when we illustrate by real examples from the real world, and not only short examples, that it's easier to understand the theory.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of that, because Roswitha, you are not part of the development in the session, but you've tried it as an end user. How was the experience?
Yeah, it was good, and as said, you have the 7 steps you should keep in mind, and it's a really handy kind of checklist if you work in supplier assessment. So what you should keep in mind. So this checklist is very handy, and spread over both models. You find indeed tips and examples from real situations, which are also very helpful for the trainees. So yeah, I think it's quite nice.
Yeah, interesting. I'm looking forward. I would like to try it also myself. But before we come into a conclusion, I would like to read another question here for you, Anne. You are very in demand today, Anne. I'm sorry. Are all materials of recently approved supplier approved, or is the qualification process based on supplier's material combination?
Can you read it again, please? The sound is not very good.
Yeah, it says here, are all materials of the recently approved supplier approved, or is it the qualification process based on supplier's material? Or is it a combination of having the suppliers approved, but also the qualification process? I'm not sure if the question is clear though.
No, the question was not very clear to me, but what I can say is that maybe it was mentioned about the raw materials. So it's not only the documents, we also have samples. We take samples and we analyze samples from the supplier. So and that is part of the qualification process. And then we also have some opcos that need to take their own samples because they have very specific customer requirements. But in general, we do for the centrally managed suppliers, we do this centrally, and then we have also local assessment that is following the same process, but then managed locally. But the qualification is done either locally or centrally, but then you have the approval is always done locally.
Yeah, approval is always done locally. Before I go to my final question, just one last question that I would like to accommodate because I think this is also important. Which one is more effective? The suppliers management supplier questionnaire, or the on-site physical audit, or is it combination of both?
I would always do the documents first, and then based on that you can see, do we really need a fiscal audit? Of course, if you have the resources to do a fiscal audit of all your suppliers, then it's great to at least go and visit them and get to. It's a great way of getting to know the suppliers, but it's not either or. It's in a way both.
It's a process actually, so you really have to follow it. Yeah, thank you very much, Anne. And talking about the suppliers assessment and suppliers management training, Roswitha, where can we find this training?
Yeah, of course, it's available on the GMP Plus Academy. If you log in or register, you'll find it on the training marketplace. If you filter on offered by and select collective knowledge program and filter on English, it will appear in the short list. But for the people who work for Trouw Nutrition, Nutreco, ABAG, Nutrion International, they can make use of the modules directly in their own company because all modules were shared. So if you have your own learning environment, you can check it out there, or maybe contact your learning and development department because it is available for you to start learning when you want. Yeah, I think that's.
Thank you very much. So for everyone who are interested to avail or to try the new e-learning module, just go to www.gmpplus.org and gmpplusacademy.org. It's very important. Yeah, I would like to thank Anne for your time today and for sharing your long-term experience and still learning, actually, as you said, because it is changing every now and then. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. It's very insightful. And thank you also, Roswitha, for sharing about the GMP Plus Academy. And most importantly, I would like to share, we would like to thank all the people who cast in or who send out their questions, a questionnaire for this afternoon. You helped us very well to have this very insightful but also fruitful conversation with Anne. And on behalf of the GMP Plus International and GMP Plus Academy, we would like to thank you all for joining us, and we wish you a good day. And if you would like to try the GMP Plus Academy e-learning module, please be there, and we'd love to see you there registered. Thank you very much.
And one thing I forgot to mention, if you start the module, it's in English, you can always use your browser translation. So if English is, if you want to translate it, it's possible. So instructions are also on the page of the training.
That's also very important language. Yeah. Anne, thank you. Any last word for the audience?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And thank you, everybody. We wish you a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.